Hello, my fine friends, and Happy New Year. Welcome to another edition of Destination Discourse. I'm your host, Stuart Butler, and I am joined today with Adam Stoker, who I'm sure has a ton of New Year's resolutions.
I sure do. And you know what? We may even do an episode talking about those New Year's resolutions, but it's it's an interesting year for me. We've had a wild several years here with me and my organization, and I really am feeling like 2026 is the year of the fresh start. And I'm so excited for what 2026 holds for me, for our organization. I couldn't be more enthused to start a year.
Yeah, it's exciting, right? I think th there's a healthy fear and concern about uncertainty, right? But I think the folks I'm talking to genuinely seem to be excited about the prospect of the opportunities. So we had a final end of the year board meeting this past week, and one of the things that our new CEO has implemented is we did a round, sort of it was more of a town hall. So we had the CEO, myself as president of the DMO, the president of the chamber, and we had some of our elected elite leaders in our foundation executive director to sit on chairs at the front and talk a little bit about what we're excited about, what we're concerned about, and then we fielded questions from the board. It was really good. It was really good to see the alignment and to have that kind of discourse in that kind of forum. It's very different than what we've done in the past, but I really liked it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually think there's going to be a lot more real, honest conversation and a lot less kind of posturing in
Hmm.
2026, where boards and DMOs and vendors and data vendors and agencies and everybody in between, we're all going to have some really honest conversation that I think are going to move us forward better than we have in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if you've heard this or not, but I mean, I've heard people claiming that we're the reason that that's happening. Everyone's drawing a line back to when this show started and the discourse that we fostered, and so I think we should take full credit for that, don't you?
You know, you're violating the shtick here. You're usually pointing to my ego and my narcissism as
Hmm.
kind of our issue, but this one really, you're taking a victory lap here, aren't you?
It's a new year. It's a new me. I think I'm going to take on my inner Adam is going to come out this year. I'm
There
going
it
to.
is.
All right, man. You want to get on with the show? This is going to be a fun
Let's do it.
episode. It's New Year's, and instead of some resolutions, I'm going to be talking about some pontifications, some predictions. Call me Nostradamus, if you will. I've got three that I want to
I
talk about. We
won't.
might get to four or five, um, but things that I think are likely to occur, and I'd love to do a sort of re revision of this later in the year and just see if we're close or not on these predictions. But we'll do me today. We'll do this, and then in a later episode, I know you always do your resolutions episode on your show, and would love to have you bring those to this show as well in
Yeah,
a couple of weeks. So that's the plan. But before we get into that, it is that time, the
it's
first of the
time.
new year. I mean, you could have put the effort in and actually created a new jingle or something, but you didn't. That's okay. We'll stick with the old, true, tried and tested. It's time for Stu's News.
And it is time to start thinking about a new jingle because you've started to like it, and that's how I know we've kind of hit diminishing
Defeats
returns
the
there.
purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
You need it's Stu's News Galaxy 2.
Oh yeah.
Stu's
See, I'm not
News.
sick of it
It's
yet.
a Stu crew.
Yeah.
Stu's
It's fun.
News.
It's
Always
man.
something
Like
new.
now you're trying to get me to make a
Stu's
new one.
News.
Yeah.
What are you?
You know,
All right.
we're in the year 2026. I mean, that sounds futuristic. I feel like we should have a better jingle by now. We should have flying cars. We should have robots in our houses, and we should have a better jingle. Just saying. Anyway, Adam, do you want to talk about what Stu's News is today?
Yeah, and I would say Stu's News today serves more as an invitation than anything else because this show, as you mentioned, apparently we've changed the entire future of the tourism landscape
Nay,
based
nay,
on your
world.
efforts alone. Oh, the
Yeah.
world, yeah.
Yeah, you helped a
Um,
little bit. I mean, you did just send a couple of emails to a few people once to invite them on the show.
here and there, but it's really kind of become something fun, special, and important, I think, to both of us. And it's starting to also create opportunities for us to do this live on stage, like we did at Esto last year. And so wanted to be a little more clear. I know we've touched on this in past episodes, but I want to invite any of our Desties that want to come to our two scheduled appearances now in Q1. The first one is at the South Carolina Governors Conference, and we'll be speaking on Tuesday, February 10th. And it's in this destination, that some people might be familiar with. And I'm not sure if you've heard of it, Stuart, but it's called Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Sounds amazing.
Oh man, world renowned.
Hmm.
I can't imagine why anybody would have a conference anywhere else other than Myrtle Beach,
I
South
mean, really,
Carolina.
it is the pinnacle. It is the best place to vacation, to bring your group, to just be present. It's an amazing place.
Exactly, exactly. So really, really excited for that. And then we're also speaking at Marcom Summit for Destinations International, and that's going to be a really fun opportunity as well. And of course, as I'm saying that, I've now lost the dates. There they are. So it's the 24th of February through the 26th of February. And
Mhm.
that's going to be another opportunity for us to speak. I believe we're speaking on Thursday, the 26th. And we're going to do not the exact same format that we did before with Esto, but we're definitely going to engage the people in the audience and give them the opportunity to weigh in, and then have a healthy discourse with everyone that is willing to participate, so that we can move everybody forward together. I think it was great at Esto. I can't wait to do it again at the South Carolina Tourism Conference and at Marcom.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. I think we learned a lot at Esto last year, and what to do and what not to do, what resonated, what didn't. So I think this will be good. And I'm hearing from a lot of people. I've been reaching out to folks asking for their predictions. We're gonna do an episode on that soon. But one of the things I'm hearing is encouragement of the discourse we are creating and the desire for this to proliferate into the conference scene. A lot of people are still saying conferences, for the most part, are playing it safe. They're not really having the hard conversations that we need to have. And so I'm hoping that this can nudge them in that right direction. And kudos to, both Esto last year and Marcom this year for taking a risk with us, because we're
Well,
we're
and
a
it's
little
definitely a
unhinged at
risk.
time. We're
You put these
definitely
two guys
unhinged.
up on stage. It's a
Yeah,
risk.
absolutely. But no, I'm really excited about it. And then obviously, the governor's conference in South Carolina, being in Myrtle Beach, is always an honor. We get it about once every 6 years or so, but that'll be fun. So anyone that's in South Carolina that wants to come to that, or anyone that wants to come to that, we're going to be talking about the state of the industry and all the things. And we're going to really try to. There's a couple of surprises. When we host things, we don't do it by halves. We're going to have a couple of little surprises. We're going to try to boil down the Myrtle Beach experience into something very unique at the conference. So I can't wait for people to see the experience that. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, same here.
Awesome. So let's do it, man. Now I need the audience and I need you, Adam, to take a journey with me. Are you ready?
I'm
Remember,
ready.
like Wayne's World, the doo-doo-doo-doo. Like I need you to sort of go into the distant, distant future. The
I
year,
what did that music do? I'm gonna need you to do more of that in order for me
more
to
of the
kind of
Wayne's
get there
World.
with you.
Yeah, I think I'm good. I think you're gonna have to watch the show back and see me do that. But I want you to take a journey with me into the distant future. The year is 2026, and position yourself as someone that cares deeply about the destination marketing industry, right? If you can pretend, I don't know how good your imagination is, but you got to really pretend here.
So far, I feel
Um,
like I'm capable of this. Go ahead.
okay. And think about all the thoughts that are swirling in your head and all the concerns and the excitement that you have. And, there's a lot of uncertainty, right? What is going to happen? What is not going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? And so I'm going to take you on a little journey today of what I think might happen in 26. And this I'm reasonably confident of these things, although, there's no guarantee. So this is not financial advice. This is not legal advice. Please don't sue me if this doesn't happen, right? So you ready?
I'm ready. The fact that you had to say this is not financial advice got me really excited about where this is going.
Well, in true me fashion, it's quite possible that I oversold this, right? Because most of this is stuff that we've talked about on the show, right? But
Sure.
again, my opinions evolve. I got to tell you, the conversation we had with Emily really shook me to the core in a lot of ways. Like she is brilliant, and I I just can't say enough how much she's right in so many things. So there's a little bit of that in here as well, but
Yeah.
not too much. All right, so let me pull this up. So because I wrote it down, and with the help of my buddy Chad, I don't know if you've met Chad before. Chad
Is
GPT.
his last name GPT? Yeah.
It is,
Okay.
yeah. So this is I'm zagging when you thought I would zig here. AI won't kill the DMO website in 2026. It won't happen overnight. And this might not be the beginning of the end, but it is the end of the beginning for DMO websites. But I don't think it's going to be as catastrophic as we think in 2026. That's my first prediction.
Can I ask you some questions around it?
Of course, that's kind of the point of the show, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think the timeline specifically, and I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, there's a lot of things that might happen, and there's a lot of threats to the future. What you're suggesting is that 2026 is not the year that any of those come to fruition.
Correct. So I don't think we're going to be sitting here 12 months from now saying DMO websites are completely dead, right? I just don't think that's the case. And we may have sort of suggested that at previous times. Now,
Yeah.
do I think that AI is going to continue to revolutionize how things can be done? 100%. Do I think we should be planting the seeds right now for that? 100%. Should we be leaning heavily into conversational commerce? Absolutely. But I think I've come to believe that the bottleneck is going to be humans, right? So even though the technology is going to exist to allow someone to do a frictionless travel booking experience without having to touch a DMO website, I don't think the adoption will happen in the next 12 months. I think it will begin to sort of happen, but and here's why I say that. Like every DMO's website traffic is down this year. Like I would guess, right? One I've talked to at least. Unless you're spending a lot
Most of
more on unless you're spending a lot more on paid media. Let me reclassify. Every DMO's organic traffic is likely down this year, right? That's probably more fair. But when I look at what is that traffic that's down, right? It's primarily as a result of the answers, the AI generated answers in Google, let's say primarily. And it's facilitating a function that isn't really necessary for the DMO to do because it's asking very simple questions that need very simple answers. So it's not necessarily people that are trying to research and book a vacation. It's people asking specific questions like, I don't know, because we're seeing some of these questions in our AI
Yeah.
thing. It's like, is Myrtle Beach open? Like generic weird stuff that really the DMO website doesn't need to serve that purpose. So when I look at the actual value of the traffic I'm getting, it's still pretty it's considerably similar to what it has been. Even though our traffic's down, the results we're getting are not as down as the traffic, right? So I think we're going to see a decline, no question. It's going to continue, but I'm not ready to panic yet. Like I think
Yeah.
the timeline is beyond 12 months. Is that fair?
Can I stress test that prediction a little
Yeah,
bit?
sure.
So in order for us to say that we believe that that's not going to happen in 2026, I want to examine the pace of evolution since 2021 when the first LLMs launched, right?
Mhm.
What has AI killed to this point?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I don't think it's killed anything.
Yeah. I think that's what I'm getting at. And to be fair, I think there's some people out there who have lost their jobs saying, well, it's killed something. And I think there's been a few people that have lost their jobs for AI and things like that. And I think that's probably a fair statement to make. But in general, I think the human adoption of AI has not caught up near with the capabilities of AI. And I think that's what you're
Right.
getting at.
That's the point I'm making, right? Humans are the bottleneck in this revolution. So I think it will be an evolution, not a revolution. And I think you know, certainly things have evolved. And when I say you're right, right, it's a little incentive to say has AI hasn't killed anything because there's certainly consequences to AI that are bearing out. But the cheese has moved, right?
Yeah.
And we as humans have to adjust and make sure that we're aiming for the cheese where it is, not where it was. So, that's in the case of we need to be educating ourselves. Everyone, whether you're C-suite or you're entry level, needs to be comfortable with AI and understand the capabilities of AI. Like everyone has to. Like it's not even it's like when you do a screening for job applicants, it's like you just assume they know how to use email, right? You just assume they know
Yep.
what an email client is and what like a PowerPoint is and stuff like that. Like I think AI has to be looked at that way. Like we just assume you know it, and then we can develop standard operating procedures and processes internally that help us. Although I'm not convinced every business is going to do that because it's not like we have standard operating procedures for email, right? And I'd say 90% of people do email completely wrong anyway, right? So the chances of us getting AI using the tool correctly, most people use a hammer wrong. So I don't know. They hit their
Yeah.
thumb, all kinds of stuff, right? So I think humans are going to slow down the adoption. Um, and the novelty is going to wear off a little bit, but I don't think the killer app happens in 2026. So I'm not as worried about my website in 26. 27 and beyond, I get a little more nervous, a lot more nervous, but not in 26.
I want to tell you a brief story, and then I want to ask you a question about application for DMOs. So basically, based on
Mhm.
your prediction, what should they do? But I want to start with this story. You mentioned that a lot of people, like, you don't have SOPs for email because you just kind of understand that most people will know how to use it, even though you said, a lot
Even
of
though
people
they
are
don't.
using it
Yeah.
wrong.
Hmm.
We hired a guy who was a fairly recent grad out of a school here in Utah, and he was really great. I mean, he had a great mind, strategic mind, and could think things through. And his boss asked him, "Hey, can you create a calendar invite for this meeting on this day or whatever?" One day passes, calendar invite doesn't come through. So the next
Hmm.
day, boss is like, "Hey, I haven't seen that calendar invite come through. Can you do that?"
Hmm.
Still nothing. Whole nother day passes, and finally he's exasperated. He goes to the kid and he's like, "Why have you not created this calendar invite for the client?" And he goes, "Well, how do you do that?" And so, like, that's exactly your point, right? Is we assume that people have like these basic um, abilities because it's almost entered the minimum expectations of the
Yeah. It's like
workforce.
reading, writing, and email prerequisites, right? We
Yeah.
just assume.
So kind of just a funny anecdote that you're right. You can't just
Hmm.
assume that people know what you assume to be the basics. But
Yeah.
the question I want to ask you, Stuart, related to that prediction is, so if I'm a DMO that has been
Hmm.
preparing for the idea that AI is going to severely either damage my website, decrease the
Hmm.
relevance of my website, or at
Hmm.
least decrease the value of what I've been claiming to be providing for my stakeholders. Does
Hmm.
this mean push pause on the on the concern
Yeah, I
or
think it does.
preparation? What
No.
what does that mean for DMOs in 2026 if you don't believe that AI is going to kill the destination website in 2026?
Well, it's that phrase we've used before. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. And we need to be planting those trees today, right? Because inevitably this is going to happen, whether it's 1 or 5 years, doesn't really matter. We need to be prepared for it and we need to be ahead of it. We don't need to be behind it, as our industry often has been. I mean, we talked a lot over the last few episodes about the role of the DMO. I'm actually going to talk about that again in a second, foreshadowing a little bit, but we're not going to be able to rely exclusively on our website for long, right? And the word long could be a year, it could be longer, but at some point, but that's why I say it's not the beginning of the end necessarily, but it is the end of the beginning. Like something is changing. We don't necessarily know what that new thing is, what the beginning of the new thing is. So we've got to be prepared for that. We've got to be thinking about, and I still stick with this, which I've been saying for over a year, is the web will become sort of a singularity experience, right? Where social, conversational commerce and information in the form of like what we know as websites now and social media is all sort of mashed together into one experience. um, to multinodal, multifunctional glue of stuff, squirrely, whirly, timey-wimey stuff, as Doctor Who would call it. I think that's where we're heading. So how do we build that? We've got to start today because it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Let me suggest to everybody that's listening too, as I think about this, you said this isn't financial advice, but I'm actually going to compare it to financial advice and say if you had an investment that was performing really, really well, and then you found out that there was some sort of circumstance. So let's say you're invested in oil, right? And you really put 80% of your budget in oil and gas. And then you start to see that there's some circumstances outside of your control that really threaten the future of the oil industry. You're going to diversify your investments to a variety of maybe real estate, maybe, stocks of other kinds that are outside of energy and so forth, right? What you're not going to do is just say, well, there's still a chance that oil and gas is going to be just fine, so I'm just going to let it ride, right? Like you've got to
Hmm.
diversify, especially where you're gleaning value that you're providing to your stakeholders. Because if all your eggs are in the website basket, it's going to be a problem sooner or later. So you might as well get started now.
Hmm. Yeah, agree. I'll tell you a little story from my history that sort of illustrates why I think humans will be the bottleneck. And so when I started my career in America in 2001, I worked for a company. It was called IntelliStrand. I was a computer programmer building booking engines for hotels. But one of the divisions we had was cable advertising sales. So we were we're a media company of sorts. And we were the representative for the local cable provider here. It's called Ori Telephone Cooperative, HTC, not to be confused with the Korean technology provider HTC, but it was called HTC. They had 50 something percent of the local cable market, and Spectrum, or Time Warner at the time had the other. So in 2001, that was a massive business. Um, I left that organization in 2021. So I was there for 20 years, right? After about 2005, every single year we would budget for this line item saying, well, people are cutting cable and it's going to dwindle and our demand's going to reduce and we're not going to get as much money. And every year we were wrong. Every year we were wrong. And so for 20 or 15 of those 20 years, we knew the technology was superior. We knew that people had access to it. We knew it was a good value proposition. But humans were the bottleneck. Humans
Yep.
didn't switch at the rate that they probably should have logically, right? And so
Yep.
I don't know if that's 5 years since I left. I don't know if that's still going strong. My hunch would be it probably is still doing pretty well.
Yeah.
So I
That's
think we're
that's
going to see this.
fascinating. I mean, AI's biggest challenge is going to be homeostasis,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
100%.
humans desire to continue doing the same thing.
100%.
Yeah.
And they'll gravitate over time to less friction and convenience, right? And they'll always trade convenience over um, security and privacy.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
if AI can make it less friction as possible, then they might. But if you look, it's really interesting. If you look recently at the trends, the adoption trends, ChatGPT is flattening out, if not decreasing, and Google is taking a lot of the share.
Yeah.
So if I was a betting man right now, I think Google's going to overtake ChatGPT at some point. But
Well, and because of my fight with ChatGPT, I'm full on Google user now.
all right, you want to do number two?
Let's get to your next one. Yeah.
I think, and one of these you're going to agree with straight away. The other one I think we need to talk about a little bit. I think there's going to be massive consolidation in the industry. And I think it's going to be on both sides of the fence, the dark side and the light side. I think we're going to see the vendors, the evil empire dark side, out of necessity consolidate, right? Whether that be agencies, software platforms. I think the reality on the ground is most DMOs have been constricted from a financial perspective. Just about every agency or provider that I've talked to is feeling that pinch, right? There's certainly less money being spent in our industry in 2026 than it was previously. And I don't think that's going to change, right? I don't
The
think it's
pie
going
got
to be,
smaller.
yeah. I don't think we're going to see a uptick in 27 either, right? So it's not like this is a temporary glitch. I think this is a permanent shift. And so I think you're going to see some of the big guys get gobbled up. I mean, gobbling up some of the little guys, right? On the vendor side. And I think that's healthy for our industry because I think one, it'll invite competition to come in. But two, I think the fragmentation that exists today is too much, right? There's a lot of people that specialize in one little piece of a solution, and I'd love to see, like, just think about all the software companies in Utah that you guys work with. Like, if that was one cohesive product suite, it would be way better for us than having to work with 5 different vendors, you know? Um, so I think we're going to see some consolidation there. But where I think gets a little bit more curveball is I, I think we might see some consolidation on the DMO side. And I think that's going to come in 2 ways. I think you're going to see maybe alignment and collaboration between maybe regional DMOs and local DMOs, right? Or maybe literal mergers. But I think where the real collapse happens is think at the city level or the area level, you're going to see different structures that have historically been very separate and maybe even at odds with each other come together more in the form of radical collaboration. Because I think it's not just the DMOs that are struggling with this. I think it's economic development. I think it's the downtown placemaking. I think it's the realtors associations, right? I think all these folks are going to be saying, hey, we're all sort of struggling with the same root cause. And unless we're rowing together, we might be in trouble. So I think that's certainly the direction Myrtle Beach is heading in terms of not necessarily mergers, but more radical collaboration between people that maybe weren't always at the same table together.
So I want to kind of break down both sides of that, and we'll start with the vendor side because obviously that's what I'm a little more familiar with. I have said for a very long time, and in fact, I've said this to a lot of the software founders that I'm connected with, that I believe there's so many SaaS companies out there, software as a service, that have a part of the solution, but every single DMO has probably room for, smaller DMOs, 3 to 5 software products that they can use, large DMOs, maybe 5 to 10 or whatever. But at some point you get to where there's too much of the budget being chewed up in software and not enough being chewed up in promotion. And you right now in the destination marketing space can buy 10 software products and have about 60% of what you need in order to actually have it provide the value that they each individually purport to provide. And so I think consolidation on the software side is inevitable. On the agency side, I think it's probably realistic. Like I'm not saying that I disagree that that's going to happen. I think the challenge is some people use big agencies because they want the comfort of knowing that the problem has been solved by that group 200 times already, right? Like I think that's bigger agencies bring scalability, they bring
Less risk.
less risk. Yeah, 100%. But you also have DMOs that value someone that you can call on a Saturday afternoon and turn something around. And by the way, this happens like almost never, right? But even the comfort of knowing that if you called your connection on a Saturday afternoon, you could have something by Monday or whatever. There's the nimbleness that a small agency brings that I would be really worried for the industry in general if consolidation eliminated or at least decrease significantly the volume of small agencies who have different value adds than major consolidated agencies. And maybe that's just because I'm looking at it through my small agency lens, and I'm 100% comfortable with the fact that I may be biased in looking at that. But we, at one point in 2020, we had 60 employees.
Yeah.
And I remember that as we were trying to manage quality and try to create consistency and everything across the board, it was kind of my nightmare. And my ability to control quality at 17 employees is just like the quality of life for me as an owner is so much better than it was back then. And I just have a hard time imagining quality at scale for a service company being able to be maintained without the smaller competitors that require that to be something you can contrast against. So before I get into the DMO side, those are my comments around
Yeah.
consolidation in the vendor space.
I'm not sure I fully agree. I mean, I understand as you scale, agility becomes more difficult, right? But we work with the big guys in the industry too, as well as the small guys, and
Of course.
I wouldn't say our level of support is much different between them, right? Maybe the speed at which things can happen generally can sometimes be slower, but I think you can always call a fire drill. If you're a good partner with anyone, I think you can adjust and but you're right. I think you do lose a little agility, but I think the other thing is you probably more so lose innovation, the willingness to take risks. But that's our inherent problem in our industry is our just apprehension of risk is
Yeah.
that's what's going to be our downfall in the long term. So I
Yeah.
don't know. We'll see. But I think the other point is if folks get gobbled up by the bigger guys, right? Or there's mergers, it leaves the space. It leaves a gap for innovation. It leaves a gap for new entrepreneurs to come into the space and innovate and create. And I think that's healthy for us,
Yeah.
especially this like let's I mean, I'm not going to call anyone out, but you know who the big vendors are in town, right?
Sure.
Have any of them really, really developed any kind of killer app that you're aware of related to the new opportunities with technology that exist today? Like I'm struggling to find examples, right? They're all
Yeah. I
dabbling,
mean,
but there's not a
yeah,
killer
the
app out there. That's
the
fundamentally
ones that are
different.
getting the most momentum are all newcomers. I would say that.
Right. So I think that consolidation breeds that in innovation a little bit. And I know we've got folks that listen to this show that are with the big guys that are probably going to punch me in the face for saying some of this stuff. But I
Yeah.
don't feel like what we're doing on a daily basis with any of our partners is substantially different today than it was in a year or two ago, right? And you think about all the technology changes that happen, you know. And I'd include you guys with that too,
Yeah.
just
Oh,
to be fair.
none of this is meant to say that like we as a small agency are better than anyone else or anything
No,
like
that's
that. I
what I
think the
heard. I
dynamics are just
mean,
different.
I just heard you say Brand Vault was better than all the others. That's what I heard.
You know what? We definitely have the same challenges that other organizations have, and I do think that's probably why consolidation is very likely. Like I think in
Hmm.
general, some of those challenges will cause
Yeah.
consolidation.
I think really the consolidation is purely economics at this point. Like if people want to maintain revenue, especially if you've got shareholders that are going to be looking at a P&L, they don't really care about much other than growth, you know?
Yeah.
The only way in this economy really to scale at a good rate, because it's hard. The procurement process in DMO world, we talked about the RFP and all that stuff. Procurement is so hard, right? And then you also have high attrition in this industry just because of the nature of the procurement. So the only guaranteed way to scale, which the big guys have to continue to scale to satisfy their shareholders, is through M&A, mergers and acquisitions. So
Well, then my request of the consolidators would be if you're going to do that and continue to drive growth through consolidation and acquisition, acquire all these software companies and put it into a single solution so that we can actually get
yes.
some stuff done.
Yeah, but do it. I almost called someone out there. You got to do it the right way, right? Because there's a pretty large vendor in the industry that got bought out not too long ago that a lot of people are not happy with. They were bought in innovation is stalled and people are concerned about the future of the product, and so you got to be careful. Efficiencies
Well,
sometimes aren't the best thing.
but I think you're actually making my point there though is that consolidation slowed down
Hmm.
innovation, and I'm
Oh yeah,
asking if you're going to consolidate, do it in a way that you're actually speeding up
yeah,
innovation,
yeah.
right?
It's additive. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the
Okay.
other side, the
Yeah,
DMO
I
side,
want to
and
understand the DMO
And
side.
can I cushion it a little bit? Like
Yeah.
a lot of this is what's top of mind to me right now because of what I'm seeing in our destination, but it's also what I'm hearing from others and what I've seen. There's a fashion in the DMO world, right? There's certain destinations that get looked at and talked about as the blueprint, and everyone wants to be them right now. And I think the soup du jour for our industry right now is this sort of umbrella structure, like in a Topeka, like in a Spartanburg. They have the Greater Topeka Partnership, they have one Spartanburg. There are others. I think Houston's like that. I think there's some others where there's just more alignment amongst the entire community. And whether that's structurally or it doesn't matter, right? It's just how do you get the community together under a single strategy versus every individual power broker and organization working together. And there's probably people screaming at me right now because they're like, hey, we're all of those things already, but we don't have the resources. So I think a part of this is going to be there's a scarcity that will necessitate this. And there's really two scarcities. One is money, right? There's a financial scarcity. But I think the bigger one is a scarcity of human capital, human resources, right? And not because we can't find talent, it's we can't afford necessarily to bring more people on. But I think the amount of work within us to do, you just go listen to the last few episodes we've had with like Jeanette and Kara, like our role is shifting. We're going to have to do more. And this will lead to my third one in a second. But we don't have more people to do that. So I think the only way we can accomplish that is to collaborate with other people and row in the same direction.
So there's things that I agree with on the consolidation front. Number one, to me, the idea of tourism and economic development being separate is a complete miss
Mm-hmm.
across the country and world. So that's a natural consolidation that I think needs to take place. And there's so much like all roads in economic development usually lead to, well, we need more tourism. And then all roads in tourism lead to, well, we need more economic development. And it's like, that's just a natural marriage that needs to take place. That doesn't mean that the political dynamics within every single destination is going to allow that to happen. But I think if you want to have true relevance and success, those two organizations need to be entirely rowing in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
When you start to look at DMOs, especially regional DMOs, and I'm not gonna talk about your destination because I don't want to put you in a position where you have to discuss something that may be being discussed behind the scenes or something. I don't know. I don't know what's happening there. But let's look at destinations and maybe we'll say here in Utah is an example that I'll give. So you've got Visit Salt Lake, and Visit
Mm-hmm.
Salt Lake is independently funded through the city, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got, well, and that's through transient room tax, as they call it here in Utah. And then you've got to
Mm-hmm.
explore Utah Valley. If you're a visitor and you're coming to Utah and you've never been here before, you don't know when you cross Visit Salt Lake's territory into Explore Utah Valley's territory.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have like a gap of city between the two. It's like you're in the same city the entire time because of the way it's structured. And yet those organizations are completely separately funded, are completely the legislatively the tax goes by county, and so everything's split. They're duplicating efforts. They've got duplicate staff. They've got they're not joined with economic development, and so they're not pushing in the same direction as economic development. And to me, yes, it's going to be a legislative nightmare, but until those organizations actually merge their efforts in some way, shape, or form,
Mm-hmm.
they're wasting as much money as they're spending efficiently, if that
For
makes
sure.
sense. Like any efficiencies are offset by the waste created by having multiple organizations.
Agree. In an era where funding is scarce, right, and resources are scarce, I think it makes sense to look at that. The problem right now is people are defending their power center, right? Whether that be money or clout or whatever it is, relevance. And so I think we've all got to put our community hats on first and say what's best. So I don't know them specifically, so I would use them as an example, but this is just theoretical, right? But there's two opportunities for those two groups, right? One is that they operate independently and go kick ass and compete and placate their stakeholders, whoever their stakeholders are, right? Whether that be the city or whether that be businesses. Um, and they're constantly sort of trying to one up each other, and they're constantly sort of competing for attention and competing for who the brand is. Or they can consolidate, whether as an entity consolidate or just in terms of a strategy, they consolidate into one aligned mission and they can work together, right? So now that you don't have to have two logos or you don't have to have two I mean, you could get all the way down to 2 accounting teams, right? If you really wanted to, but
Yeah.
let's just stay on the marketing side. One narrative, one message. Now you've got more impressions of that message. You've got more reach of that message. It's going to resonate more, and it's going to be more of a cohesive one that the whole community rallies behind. So I, I think it's a no-brainer. I think it should have happened a long time ago.
Yeah. That's not to pick on Utah, because this dynamic exists in
Happens everywhere.
every
Happens in my
state.
backyard. It happens everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean,
Everywhere.
we have some confusion with that because we've got, and we're trying really hard, and it's better than it has been, but we're not in lockstep. We've got, Visit Myrtle Beach, which is the full Grand Strand, the 60 miles of beaches, and we're really from the North Carolina border down to Pawleys Island, which is actually in a different county. So we represent the county and a little bit more, but then we have within that jurisdiction, we also have Destination North Myrtle Beach, right? Which is just north of Myrtle Beach that are doing their own thing. We love them. We work together, but we're not like aligned strategically, and we should be more. And then if I go south, we've got the Hammock Coast, which we're building those relationships too. And I love those guys and the work they're doing, but we don't sit down and talk strategically about stuff, and so we should. And I don't know if they listen, but I would love that opportunity more because I think rising tide lifts all boats, and we're certainly connected. Most consumers that come to the Myrtle Beach area don't know the boundaries, right? They don't know the
Yeah.
difference between Myrtle Beach and North Myrtle Beach and Conway and Pawleys Island and Morris Inlet. They're coming to the beach, or they're coming to the Myrtle Beach area. So we
I'm real
we have
quick just
opportunities.
let me add in that I did a full episode with the CEO of, I believe it was Visit Northern Kentucky, and she talked about the collaboration that they've done with Cincinnati, and they did a joint
Hmm.
campaign together. And it was one of the most. By the way, they're in different states, but literally you cross the river, you go from one state to the other. It's like the same
Yeah.
community,
The
basically, right?
consumer doesn't care that they're in different states.
Consumer
They have
doesn't
to be,
care.
yeah, yeah,
And
for
their
sure.
joint campaign was the most successful campaign they'd ever done. So if anybody
Great.
wants to understand that a little bit better, maybe check that out on that episode. But
That's great.
collaboration helps. It's way better than doing it on your own.
For sure. Radical collaboration. That's what we're all about. And I know that's it. There's a lot of folks being attributed to that phrase right now. Like there's some folks at DI and some others. I've heard like 3 different people say, oh, this person coined it. I first heard it from our CEO, Matt Pavanik. So I certainly didn't coin it, but whoever coined it, that's the problem, right? Our industry cares about who gets credit. It doesn't matter who gets credit. Let's just embrace the concept of radical collaboration. All right, Adam, we got about 8 minutes.
Yeah,
We'll
let's get
get
to your
through this
third
third one and say our goodbyes. So this is a brand new concept, and I kind of like leaving it to last because it might be something we want to explore in a whole episode later on. But I think 2026 might be the beginning of the end for the destination. And what I mean by that is I think experiences will replace the destination. I think they already are. But I think that's going to be more important. So you talked
dissect
about
that for
this.
me.
You talked last episode about DMOs don't influence your travel decisions. You were playing with me and trying to argue me. I don't think you really meant that. I don't know if you want to clear that up or not, but you clearly didn't mean that DMOs
I
don't
talked
know.
about it on the last. Yeah, I talked
Yeah,
about it on the last episode, but
right,
definitely didn't mean to say that
right.
they don't
But
influence it
your
at all.
your point was part of this, right? Which is a lot of people now are traveling for a football game, a Taylor Swift concert, or something they saw on social media. Like my kids and I went to Florence, which is like an hour and a half away. Now my wife wanted to go there anyway to do some shopping or something, but we wanted to go, not to go shopping with her, but because they'd seen a TikTok. I think I'd mentioned this a while back on the show, but it was a TikTok about it was a Chinese restaurant in the shopping mall that had gone viral on TikTok because they just overload the box, right? So you normally would get like a regular serving. They would just literally put so much food in so you couldn't close it, and it was their shtick. And they jacked the prices, so you were paying for it. They were making more money, but it was an experience that we've seen on social media and we wanted to be a part of, right? So I think the way, especially the younger folks are traveling, it's going to be less about I want to go to Myrtle Beach. It's going to be I want to go to Myrtle Beach to the National House of Pancakes, right? Which is not to be confused with the International House of Pancakes. We got this place here that's become really popular online because they've got like literally $40 pancake stacks and they do all this creative stuff. It's kind of like a crazy Mason
Yeah.
for breakfast, right?
Yeah.
And people are paying ridiculous, but it's funny because half the people on social media are saying, "I'm here, look at me, status. I can spend $40 on pancakes," and then a bunch of people are posting on social media how stupid and expensive it is and how they stormed out. But either way, there's a line out the door every day, right?
Yep.
So people, I think, are going to travel more, and I think we've already seen it in 25, but I think this is just going to accelerate in 26. That the destination brand is less important than the experiences, specifically the experiences within your destination. And so, therefore, DMOs are going to have to think about what their role is, which we've already talked about. But it might mean for folks like us that have gotten out of the event planning game that we're back into event planning. We're back into attracting the right kind of economic development and things like that. So that's, I think 26 is the year that really turns.
I would like to do a whole episode on that because I don't think I could agree with you more on the relevance of experiences compared to the destination specifically. I think that's why, and I can't remember which episode it was that we started. It might have been with Diane a few weeks ago. But anyway, we talked about why destinations may need to consider making product one of their biggest priorities, and how can you work with
I think so.
with your stakeholders to build experiences that are noteworthy enough to make people want to come to your destination. And so that means if you've
Mhm.
got a pancake house that's just a normal pancake house and has good pancakes, how do you turn it into an experience? And
Mhm.
destinations need to be identifying opportunities for experience within the product, within the destination, and then amplifying those experiences so that you can get attention and get people to come have those experiences in Myrtle Beach or whatever destination you might be in.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the big kind of twists that's coming. I think you've successfully identified that I think that's going to be a big change in 2026 is that relevance will be traded from destinations to experiences. I think you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think our role becomes the truth bearer of those experiences, right? Because I think the other trend I almost put in, I wanted to put in, but I knew we wouldn't have time, was that the currency is trust, right? Trust becomes the currency in the future in terms of how people make decisions, especially with AI,
Yes.
like who's the source of truth and all that stuff. I think that's a big deal, but maybe that's another episode. But I think this is the opportunity for DMOs. We talked a little bit about what is our relevance, and maybe we're inventing our own relevance a little bit, but I think if we're sort of part economic development in conjunction with any existing economic development folks, we're part event planners and we actually put them on, or we're at least promoters of events more so than we have been. But I think we have to be curators of experiences in nurture these businesses to show them what can they do to up their game and be more relevant and be more visible and not just be another average pancake house, right? And so then our messaging is going to have to shift. And this is where I don't have it all figured out yet, but we're not going to be able to go out with messaging saying, come to Myrtle Beach because we have over 2,000 amazing restaurants, right? We're going to have to say, well, come to Myrtle Beach, we have 2,000 amazing restaurants. Have you heard about this one and this one and this one and this one? Which is going to get really hard when you have members. Not every DMO has members, but someone like us does. And you got to try to treat them more fairly. So I think the era of us having to treat all businesses equal has to disappear, right? In the era of trust, we can no longer have a listing page
Yeah.
that showcases every business the exact same way. We've got to start talking about their strengths.
Diplomacy makes it really difficult to inspire action.
It does, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to have to embrace reviews, right? We're going to have to embrace real people's testimonials. And I think one of the technology drivers of why I think the experiences are going to replace the destination is it's going to be easier. You think about last week, we're talking to Emily with her meta glasses, right?
Yeah.
And so how frictionless it is now to document and publish experiences. I, we're going to see an increase in content and an increase in
Yes.
storytelling from individuals. So that's going to drive the experience, which is going to drive demand.
You know what? I had low expectations coming into this with the quality
Thanks,
of
man.
your predictions for 2026.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, I think these are really good predictions. And what's funny is if it's not what actually happens, I still believe it's what should happen. And so it'll be interesting
Yeah.
to see what the gap is between, your prediction and what actually ends up happening because I definitely agree with you that those three things should happen.
Yeah. I think they'll all happen on a timeline, right? I think 26 is the year we'll start to see it. The only one I really put my neck out on is saying that something wouldn't happen in 26, right? Which is the death
Yeah.
of the website. So that one has a time constraint. The rest is if it happens at any point in the future, I'm a genius, right? Because I predicted it. So it's like saying at some point the sun is going to engulf the earth. Well, it will in like 4 billion years, but we're going to have to wait until then to prove that you're wrong,
I
So
like it. I
cool,
like way
man.
to hedge.
Well, this is fun. So, we're gonna have a few different episodes over the next few weeks, but a few of them are going to be predictions. We're going to have Amir Elon come on. He's going to talk about some predictions that aren't related to AI. He's going to talk about the trends that are impacting us that aren't AI. We're going to have a consolidated episode where they've already submitted their predictions. So we're going to hear from a lot of smarter people than us in the industry that have
Which will be
submitted their
refreshing, I think, for our audience.
predictions. Yeah, I mean, it's about time we gave them some intelligent conversation. Um, and then I think you're going to do your episode on resolutions, right? Which is sort of predictions as well.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be thinking a lot about 2026. But I tell you, man, I'm excited about 2026. I think it's going to be a stellar year. I think we've all got to roll up our sleeves and go to work in 26. This is not the year for playing it safe. This is not the year for us to continue the status quo, right? Because the threats are real and they're going to get worse over the next 12 months, not better. And so we collectively and individually have a responsibility and a duty to our industry. It's like a civic responsibility, if you were, for the industry. I don't know if that would make sense because we're not like a city, but we have a responsibility to our peers to solve some of these challenges together. But it starts with conversation. It starts with us having the courage to stand up and say, I don't agree with that. Or what if we try this differently? And we got to stop being safe. We got to stop worrying about us as individuals and our livelihood, right? And if we believe in something, we got to commit to it. And so that's what I plan to do. I might get fired. I might not. I hope I don't. I'd prefer to keep my job in 2026,
I think
but I'm
that's
going to
probably a
try to
good
change
goal.
the industry. Yeah, it should be everyone's goal, right? Unless they hate their job. I actually like my job. So, Adam, any final thoughts for you before we sign off?
I'm really excited. This has been fascinating for me to just kind of think through the upcoming year. I'm excited to go through my predictions and resolutions for 2026. And now that I've got yours, I feel pretty confident that I can one up them successfully. So I'm really excited about that
That's
as
why you
well.
didn't do yours first. Yeah, that's fair. That's on brand. All right, we're back to normal. 2026 didn't last too long without your ego getting out of control.
Nope, nope, never will.
All right, well, Happy New Year to everyone. Uh, until next time, this has been Destination Discourse.
Thanks, everybody.